The July 22nd, 2014 meeting of the Wakefield School Committee. I'd like to start by reading our mission statement. It is the mission of the Wakefield Public Schools to educate and inspire every student to live a life of engaged learning, personal responsibility, and positive contribution through a safe and healthy learning environments, a diverse learning opportunities, high-quality teachers and staff, community involvement and partnerships, and 21st century tools and skills. Our first item on our agenda is, as always, is anybody from the general public who has comments. Seeing none, I'd like to move on to our educational spotlight and ask Dr. Zreich to introduce our new Woodville principal.
Great. Good evening, everybody. I am pleased to be able to introduce to you our new principal of the Woodville. Yep, if you could just come up. I'll just read a little brief summary on her, although I have to say I wrote this and then I learned so much more about her when I read the item and learned about all the fantastic things that she's done in her life that I didn't know, so I learned something. But I'm very excited to introduce Michelle Zatoli. She brings a wealth of teaching and leadership experience at the Woodville. She began her career as a second grade teacher in California. She's taught multiple grade levels in Lowell, Lexington, and then most recently she served as the principal at the Wyman School in Woburn. And we were very fortunate to have a experienced, seasoned principal join us in Wakefield. Under her leadership, the Wyman School made very impressive gains and maintained its level 1 status, which is the highest status that an elementary school can have. She has degrees from Bryan College, Sacred Heart, University of Lowell, and the MGH Institute of Health Professions. And having been part of the interview process, she was clearly the leading candidate, and we were very excited that she wanted to come join our team in Wakefield. And the other thing that I'll say about Ms. Zatoli is she serves on the statewide park, what do they call it, committee?
The advisory committee.
Advisory committee to the state around the implementation of a park. So she's, has an opportunity to share Wakefield's input and to bring us a lot of information. So I already feel like I've gained a lot from hearing her perspective on some of the statewide work around the park. So welcome, Ms. Zatoli, and I didn't know if you wanted to say a few things, and then the committee has questions for her.
I just wanted to thank everyone for the warm welcome that I've received. I've been at the school for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks now, and I've met many of the teachers, some of the students, parents, and it's just been great to be so warmly welcomed into a new position. So thank you all.
You certainly walked into a beehive of activity your first day with the opening of summer school.
Oh, yeah. It actually, kind of makes the day go by, because being in a building that's really quiet, I'm not used to that. The school year, or the building's really busy, and so it's kind of nice to have that during the summer too. And I've been able to meet some of the Woodville students that way also.
Any questions from anybody on the committee?
It's welcome. Yes. Thank you.
You're really getting off easy, see?
I know. It's a good thing it's summer.
Well, thank you very much for coming out at night to our meeting, and I think it's important for the public to kind of get a chance to see who you are, put a name with a face, and certainly welcome to our community, and I'm sure you do wonderful things there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Zatoli.
Did you want to change the order at all to help put the students first? Did you want to just go?
It's up to you.
I'm happy to defer my stuff till after.
Sure. Okay. Great. So I guess we'll move into the real highlight of tonight is our presenters and the team of folks who are here to present on the youth risk behavior survey that was administered at the middle school and at the high school. And I can just say that having read both surveys pretty thoroughly, is a wealth of information for us to take from what our students shared with us. I think it's remarkably, there's some real remarkable consistency from what was given 2 years ago to 2014. But there's a lot of food for thought and we need to respond to it. I mean, I always talk about the need for more data and more information, and here is some really critical, important data on our students, what they're telling us about the challenges they face in the community and risks that impede their ability to learn. And as a school system, we have a responsibility to respond. What's particularly, I think, exciting about this presentation you're going to see tonight is it's a partnership between our assistant principal from the high school, T.J. Liberty, our assistant principal from the middle school, and Catherine Dingra, who is the substance abuse prevention coordinator for the town of Wakefield. And so the three of them, I forgot to mention Andrew Petrol, but the three of them together really did the bulk of this work, have put together recommendations that you see in the packet. You don't have this presentation because this is a Prezi, very fancy presentation, but what you do have is the full survey. You have a summary sheet, and then you have a one-pager on list of recommendations and kind of the big takeaways from the presentation. But these folks have been immersed in this for the last few months and have really looked at the data, and I think will offer a valuable perspective being in the work as educators, and then Catherine's role as supporting the town of Wakefield in, through their, health work. So I'll turn it over to Catherine and the team to share their findings.
Great. Well, thank you. And as Superintendent Zreich said, the District of Wakefield administered this survey 2 years ago, and now with the Community of Wakefield was awarded the Drug-Free Communities Grant, which I was hired under in November. We were able to administer it again. So I just want to kind of give an overview of what the YRBS is. It's a survey based on the CDC developed tool that's used across the country. We used ours modeled off the Massachusetts Youth Risk Behavior Survey from 2011. And it's really meant to measure different risk factors. And we took a lot of steps to make sure that this is a valid process. And we can talk a little bit about that process. So you can see our fancy Prezi that my health intern worked on. So in November 2013, Superintendent Zreich approved to administer this survey. And just really briefly, prior to being hired here, I was a volunteer on the Wakefield Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, but I have a lot of public health experience running the same grant for the city of Lynn, so a lot of experience administering the Youth Risk Behavior Survey and using the data to make positive changes in the school system. So he put together a work group of myself, Ruth Clay, the health director, TJ, and Andrew. And at that point in December, we took a look at identifying potential evaluators, solicited bids, selected health imperatives based on the bids and confidence in their ability to do the work. And then we sat down and worked with the evaluator to add and eliminate survey questions and really wanted to get a better understanding on some of the mental health concerns that we had. So we took, TJ and Andrew and I looked at a lot of different evidence-based questions and added those to the survey so we can just get a better understanding. And then in mid-February, we sent the passive parent consent home to all parents and guardians, and then we had the survey available in the schools, and we let parents know that so they were able to opt out if they wanted to. And then on March 7th, all students that were present that day, unless they had been opted out, took the survey, and we had the results back on April 17th. So then we were able to kind of take a look at the survey and go from there. So obviously the purpose of the survey is to really kind of make some educated decisions on what to do around some of these risk factors and allocate, resources or develop new strategies to address some of these issues. So here's an example of a survey from the question we used two years ago to now, and you can kind of see the results. This was used cigarettes in the past 30 days. And we see 2011, the rates were 16%. 2 years later, the reason it's 2011, that was November, and 2014, it was March. But 2 years later, we see it drop down to 10%. So we can see that's something trending in the right direction. And that's just an example of we can use this for evaluative purposes, or we can use it to decide to implement new strategies. So I'm going to turn it over to TJ and Andrew to talk a little bit about what happened in their prospective schools.
Sure, so we can begin by kind of doing a demographic breakdown for you of who took the survey, participated in the survey. About 812 students on that day selected to take the survey. About 45% were male, 55% are female. And we break it down according to grade, so you can see the breakdown for grades, also the demographics in the school, how it's broken down there, as well as we did ask questions about sexual orientation as well.
Middle school, we didn't do all the grades. We just did 7th and 8th grade, just kind of focusing on the older students. So 484 students on that particular day took the survey. Pretty even split as far as the male and female ratio. You can see by grade, 7th and 8th grade, and again, it asks the similar questions about race and ethnicity as far as our particular demographics work.
So one of the first categories we're going to discuss with you today is the results of the survey with regards to violence and bullying within the school. And at the high school, we see about, the question was asked with regards to how many students experienced bullying. Approximately 21% recorded that they did. There was another question, said what type of bullying, specifically with regards to social media, online, through phone. About 13.7% said that. We do break down numbers for you to show what the percentages mean in a numeric form. So about 170 of the 812 students that took the survey said that they had been bullied at school at some point in time in the last 30 days, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then about 111 said they were bullied online. Does not go into necessarily the severity of the bullying, but the fact that they did experience bullying. We looked at violence in relationships. This was fairly low. The reason why we included this in the survey, and more importantly in the presentation today, is looking at, although 2% where students responded that they were hurt sexually or hurt physically, 2% equals about 16 students. It's important that we never nullify results, that we're cognizant of these things, and we are, address them the best way that we can. But the good thing is that the majority of our students responded that they had not been hurt in any way or form in a relationship. Sexual contact against will, again, about 8% said that they had reported that they had forced sexual contact. That equates to about 64 students.
So some of the questions for the high school and middle school differ a little bit. They didn't go too much into depth about just because of the age appropriateness of the questions. But we wanted to highlight some of the bullying situations. As you remember, about a year ago, I came and spoke about the comparison of the Oveus bullying program that we're running at our school. And this kind of just helped solidify the work that we're doing with that. Back in 2012, when we first issued that Oveus program, there was a similar question in the YRBS survey about frequency of bullying, and it used almost the same language 2 to 3 times in the past month. And so just to highlight that, in 2012, the students, the same cohort of students as these YRBS students that we took this year, when they were 5th and 6th graders, it was around 12.5%. The following year, in 2013, it dropped down to 9.5%, and that was after 1 year of the Oveus bullying program. So this is kind of another survey which would, similar questions, will validate some of what we're doing, and in that 2 to 3 times in a month, that same cohort of students, again, they're down to 6%. So we are showing progress in at least some of our efforts there. We're missing sometimes, but we're heading in the right direction.
Next category, with regards to substance abuse, drugs, and alcohol specifically. We did see from a slight drop from 2011 to 2014, approximately about 1%. It is slightly higher than the state average from the results from the 2013, but not dramatically. Again, 36% is about 292 students that said they've had a drink within the last 30 days. The next question dealt with more binge drinking. We see about 20% reported to engage in binge drinking, and again, slightly higher than the state average in 2013, but not dramatically higher. Again, about a fifth of our students, population of our students, have stated that they've engaged in binge drinking in the last 30 days. And again, these are things that help to bring to light certain things, both for us and in the community, so we can help to address these. The one positive thing with regards to the drinking that we're seeing is the results from the survey. We see a decrease from the 2011 to the 2014 with risky behavior while drinking and with regards to driving, either getting behind the wheel themselves or getting behind the wheel with someone that has been drinking. So we're happy to see that that was the case. And again, we talked a little bit about the use of cigarettes. That has dropped. One of the, I wouldn't say alarming, but one of the responses we saw was an increase, well, not really an increase, evidence of electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes. It was difficult to compare this to 2011 because honestly the technology, if you will, was not really there in 2011. E-cigarettes, these kind of vapor cigarettes, if you will, are more popular now. And actually in Wake Up, that's something that I know the community has been looking at and we've been looking at in the school as well to help address that. And again, marijuana use, about just a slight drop, which again, a good trend, even though it's a percentage drop, it's still a drop nonetheless, and it's a trend we want to see to continue. We are under the state average, albeit slightly, but still under the state average, which is a positive. And again, a trend we want to continue to move towards. And again, pleasantly surprised to see the prescription pills usage among students is low. However, we'd like to see it always at 0%. 48 students have expressed using prescription medication for illicit purposes to get high. But again, 6% is a low number. But once again, even with a 6%, it's something that we need to look at and continue to have discussions with our students about.
At the middle school level, well, a couple of the things we wanted to highlight for you folks tonight is, and you'll notice in a couple of the next slides that 7th grade starts off fairly minuscule, and then there is a jump that something happens between the 7th and 8th grade. I mean, I think we all know what happens, but something happens that makes this jump go up. It's a little concerning at the middle school level, and we're as a school, we're going to have to try to wrap our heads around what is happening and why is it increasing. For instance, in the alcohol, in the past 30 days, you'll notice that it says 12% in 7th grade. In 8th grade, it goes to 18.6%, which is, it's kind of a significant jump. Going to the cigarette as well. 7th graders, again, not using a whole lot, but then a jump again in 8th grade. And obviously, that e-cigarette being the big thing at the middle school right now, I can say from the past year. It's becoming a well-known prevalence among some of the students. So we're gonna, again, as a community, try to figure out what we're gonna do about that. And the marijuana use as well, although down at the high school level, the middle school level, less than 2%, 7th grade, and then all of a sudden in 8th grade, we're jumping up to 7% in 8th grade using marijuana. So as a school, we're going to have to come together and try to figure out what are we going to do, and even as a community, what's going on to try to kill that curiosity, if you will.
One of the largest concerning results of the survey had to deal with mental health, and it's not a surprise, I'm sure, to this committee, to many people in our community across the country and unfortunately across the world. We're seeing a huge uptick in mental health concerns, specifically amongst our younger populations, younger people. This was reflected in the survey. We looked at questions around feelings of hopelessness, as well as self-harm and suicidal ideation. Unfortunately, those numbers were a little bit higher than we'd ever want them to be, of course. These are comparisons because we did not have real mental health focused questions in the 2011. There's no comparable to those results from the 2011 YRBS, but we can compare them to the 2013 state results. With regards to feeling sad or hopelessness, we're around 20 to 21%, right in line pretty much with the state. Self-harm, 18%, which is an alarming number. 18% is about 146 students from the high school. Of those 812 that were surveyed, about 146 said they had self-harm. Depression and suicidal ideation. In the high school, there was a question regarding this at 2011. It's 9%. That number shot up to 16% in 2014.
And as you can see in the red, the eighth grade again climbs off the charts, up to 20% of the students, having that or wrestling with that struggle about suicide. So it's something that we're not going to take obviously lightly, and I know the district won't.
And when we talk about suicidal ideation, we're talking about students that are seriously considering suicide, and perception is reality to those individuals, and we need to hear what they're saying to us. And it's important that when we look at these results that we've already been talking about steps that we could take before the survey results even came out. But this helps to solidify as a community what we need to do to help our young people.
This one, the actual making a plan to commit suicide. It's bad enough that some of our students are struggling with thoughts about doing it, but then to go ahead and make a plan is another level. And so, the high school students, it kind of shoots up for them. But in 7th and 8th grade, again, it's nothing little. You're still looking at 10%, 8%, almost 9% for 8th graders, and you're talking about 100 students now just in the 7th and 8th grade. It's only 2 grades that some of the students are really struggling with some of the way they're feeling.
Attempted suicide, again, alarming rate. The high school, approximately 10% have stated in the survey and reported in the survey that they have attempted suicide. And again, that's almost double what the state average was from a year ago.
Some of the questions talked about the social impacts that they have, these feelings have on them, being able to actually go out and hang out with friends or partake in, maybe if it's at the high school level, some of the playoff games, or just hanging out with some friends at the middle school level. And it talked about whether it's, quite a lot or could not do any activities at all. At the middle school, it's at 0 7th graders, which is good to talk about. But there are 4 8th graders walking around saying that they couldn't do any activities because they just were in such a dark hole.
Treatment for mental health amongst high schoolers, only about 11% of students said that they have currently received treatment from a doctor or taking medicine to address any type of behavioral, mental, or emotional health problems that they are experiencing. And this does not include ADD or ADHD, which I'm sure if that did include, those numbers would be much higher.
And then at the middle school level, only 25 kids. That's it. Out of all those students that are feeling not fantastic, as we'll say, only 25 of them are seeing someone or talking to someone outside of the school.
We also looked at what are the causes of the stress. This shouldn't be too surprising. The middle school and the high school both reflected similar results. Classes and grades are the biggest stressors for students. Second to that is family problems. But if you look at it as a holistic thing, if you ask the kids to break down, if all these are part of their issues, I'm sure that would be the case. Usually classes and grades, when most kids that we talk to, talking about stressors, about getting into the right college, about having the right grades, being on honor roll, being stressors, and that can also translate into other things outside of school as well.
And it was eerily weird how both schools were almost spot on. You know, classes and grades, and TJ and I were talking about it earlier today, and to try to imagine a student walking around with a bunch of books in their hands, just talking about their everyday work, school, and everything, and that's enough for a student to feel overwhelmed, to feel kind of hopeless sometimes. But then you start throwing in some of these, which seem small, 12% family issues and 6%, 7%, but then they all add up, and sometimes we've got to be aware of that as a community, and especially as someone with little ones, my kiddos coming home, I don't want them to ever feel like they're coming home where they can't unload and talk. But yeah, some of our Wakefield kids are walking around
Heavy
with
burdens.
heavy burdens.
Some kind of overarching stats that we looked at: nutrition, eating habits, weight loss. We saw with the high school about 45% of students said that they used exercise as a means to lose weight. About 10% used not eating or eating less calories. Again, 31%, as you can see, trying to kind of combine the two. And then we do see 11%, again, about 89 students that reported that they were using more drastic means to try to lose weight, food deprivation and things like that.
They talked a little bit about some of the sexual health for the students of Wakefield, and it talked a little bit about, at least at the high school level, there was a little bit more of these appropriate questions for them. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I guess I could probably take this one. I was hoping you were gonna.
Yeah, middle school. I'm going to say
You're a parent, so you can get practice. Again, what we saw was, again, about 29% of students in 2011 reported that they had engaged in a sexual activity, sexual intercourse, about 31% in 2014. You can see about the average age, as you can see, is about 15 years old for the first experience. In Massachusetts, we are below that average that Massachusetts has in the state, which is also a positive. And of course, these questions, this sexual health questions, were followed up with HIV and STD testing. About 89% of high school students, 88 to 89%, reported that they had not been tested for STDs. About 1%, 1 to 2% said that they were, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So at this point, you do have a kind of a one-page overview. I know that you all had a chance to read through the results and probably have some questions. We are more than happy to answer any questions that you have to the best of our ability. We do have a list of things on this sheet that we can go over, proactive steps that we are currently taking, things that we plan on doing as a district to try to address these concerning numbers and, more importantly, concerns that our student body has, our young people in this town have. Would you guys like the opportunity to ask questions, or would you rather us kind of go over some of the points that we have?
Go ahead.
I'd like to hear the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Sure, why don't we start with Wake Up?
Okay, so with our Drug-Free Communities grant, we're able to fund a lot of initiatives that specifically address some of the underage drinking, the e-cigarettes, the marijuana issues, and we're using the community approach. So we have school personnel and police and community members and parents, and we actually have 2 of our youth members here. We have a very active youth team now. So we're taking a lot of different approaches, looking at changing policies, making sure e-cigarettes are in our school policies, doing a lot of things like taking drug paraphernalia out of our convenience store. So policies, we're looking at increased education, increased parent education, and then the youth are going to develop a lot of strategies. Some of their strategies are going to focus on these numbers. So I asked our youth team, how many percentage of youth do you think are using marijuana? And they're thinking 60, 70%. And what we do is the youth are going to present the data to their peers in a way that it really shows them, less than 25% of kids are actually using marijuana. So most kids are making the right choice. So it kind of that positive peer pressure. So we're going to address it with a lot of different strategies, and we're looking forward to working on it in a multi-pronged strategy.
And the partnership between the schools and community-based organizations like Wake Up is so essential for everybody to be on the same page, to hear what we're seeing at the schools, to see what Catherine and the team from the town is seeing, and to help work in a partnership to address these concerns.
We talked, what can the schools do, and even the district at large, and one of the ideas that we're throwing around, we're going to investigate a little bit more about it, is the idea of some counseling coming into the schools, some outside counseling, and whether we can utilize that. And we know that there are some districts that have utilized that, but we're going to see what that would look like in a school day, and how does that work if a student goes and kind of has a good session and vents, and can they go back to class? Would they be able to? So we have to try to figure out how that looks. But as the survey kind of showed, there is some kids that are not speaking to anyone, and they're just kind of holding it in. And so if we just make some more people available, what that might do.
The other thing we can do as a district is something that as educators we do best, and that is to educate ourselves through professional development about mental health strategies, how to help our students, as well as provide opportunities for our community members, parents. Dr. Shrike had put on along with Catherine, the Parent University, and which was just great reception by the parents, people that I talked to that were very much interested in. And the forums that filled up first were the ones that dealt with mental health. And, looking about, trying to bring the community and parents in who are desperate to learn about what's going on with their child, because in many cases they're lost. And last thing you want to do is pop on the internet, because it'll tell you the worst. It's like going to WebMD. It'll give you the worst, the worst of the worst, and then you really start freaking out, and that's not good for the child. It's important to get the right information, to have an outlet for parents to be able to learn about what's going on and what they can do and what part they can play to help their child. Also, we have a tremendous partnership with the police department through our school resource officer, Officer Kelly Tobine. It's a tremendous resource for the middle school, looking in, for providing that same. She's also a resource for the high school, but looking at possibility of the SRO at a high school level as well. Having the police presence is not so much a punitive thing, but it's a means to kind of build a partnership and a trusting relationship with the students so they can feel safe.
Obviously this year, and one of the outcries that we heard, or that Dr. Reich heard through the community forums, was the social, emotional, and the well-being of the students from the parents. And so we, the district, obviously at the Galvin level, we're able to hire school counselors, the student counselors for them this year. So we're already taking a step forward in the right direction. And in addition, we also at the Galvin level hired another additional health teacher, wellness health teacher, who we're now able to introduce health at the 5th grade level, which will be something new. And again, if we can start early, maybe help alleviate some of these students as they get older, especially into that 8th grade and obviously their high school years. And then I talked about earlier, the anti-bullying program that we've got going on is obviously seeing success, and we've got to continue to put some efforts into that and change it up and make sure it's still relevant and new to the students every time.
We also have an anti-bullying curriculum at the high school through the diversity leaders, and I know you're all familiar with. They've been in and have spoken to you a number of times. Ms. Danahy, you know that personally with Caroline being involved. And we also have outside of the school, we have a partnership with the police department beyond our SRO. We have monthly meetings with representatives from the court system, as well as the police department and the schools, that come to meet and talk about what's going on in the community, what's going on with their young people. What are we seeing in the schools? What are they seeing in the community? And how can we best serve and best support these students? It's not so much a punitive thing. Once again, some of our students are struggling with things, and unfortunately they get in trouble outside of school with the law. But it's important for us to sit at the table and talk about what's going on, so we are all on the same page and find ways to best support those students. We also are in the process of creating a district safety, mental health, and behavioral team. And again, the purpose of that is to create a district, collaboration, district communication from school to school to see what our young people are dealing with and be able to develop as a district, work with Dr. Shrike in the central office to create, things that are going to allow our students to be in a better place and not just work it from a school-to-school standpoint, to have it as a community, if you will, a school community.
At the Galvin, definitely at the high school as well, we have student support teams which meet, in addition to the CBJ that TJ talked about. This is more of a school-based one where we start focusing just on our kiddos. And some of the staff members that sit on CBJ will bring back some information as well. But the student support teams have a chance, whether it's psychologists, the nurse, assistant principals sit in, counselors psychologists have a chance to sit in and just discuss some of the students and things that are going on. And those usually meet monthly. I know at our level we're starting to start kicking it off this summer, start a little bit earlier, just to get a handle on some of this data. And the Health and Wellness Committee, obviously, we got to start meeting again, and I know Kristen and I will be working closely in getting that committee together and taking this data apart and saying, all right, what can we do as well from that side.
And lastly, and I know a lot of the things we're talking about address some of the mental health concerns, but we felt looking at the results from the survey, that was the higher lever, if you will, the most important thing that we need to focus on, the one that's impacting our students the most, our young people the most. I believe as a community, there was a application for a substantial grant for mental health services, and I believe at the town level, they're looking into that, hoping to be awarded that grant. If they're awarded that grant, hopefully they'll be able to put in place some support for families that need it, because unfortunately I think parents are at a loss of what to do, and we want to use every avenue that we can, every resource that's available to us as a community to help them.
And obviously, on the reference sheet has there's a whole column there of positive things that are going on as a result from this, and we don't want to just hammer some of the negative things, but on the whole, the town, the school, doing a great job of getting these kids ready for becoming mature adults and lifelong learners as well.
And sometimes we do focus on the negative because it's easy to say we need to address this, but the majority of our students are reporting to us that they feel safe. The majority of our students are making healthy decisions, and the majority of our students are doing the right thing. And we want to celebrate that as well. We don't always want to make this presentation about what's bad. We want to really focus on what's good. But at the same time, it's our responsibility to take these results and look and see what we're doing well and what we need to do to improve. And that's what we're doing with these results as a team and working with you as a committee as well as the community to do so. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to hear this presentation. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Janine? Oh, Chris?
I was going to ask one quick one, and then
Yeah.
we'll round the table. I guess one of the most startling numbers to me was that when you talk about the number, the small number of students that are actually getting outside help.
Yes.
Do you think they're hiding their problems from their parents, or the parents are in denial, or where do you think what's driving that?
It could be a combination of everything. There is, one of the positives was that there is a healthy realization of the students that their parents would disapprove of some of these risky behaviors, drinking and smoking, and it was above like 90%, I know. And so I think some students are wrestling, going, I can't tell mom and dad about this, or whoever their guardians, and they're going to be mad at me, and so I've got to kind of bear the weight on it my own. I don't want any help. I want to fix it myself. It could be any one of those.
I think too, I agree with Andrew in the sense that two things. I think one, both parents and students have a difficult time coming to the realization that something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to think that there's something wrong with yourself. And,
Exactly.
and as a parent, I'm not a parent, but being a teacher for the last 11 years, I feel like I am in some ways because I care about these kids as much as they were my kids. I can see that you, as a parent, wouldn't want to say that there's something wrong with my child. I think what's important, the most important thing, is education. And one of the things that this does is it helps parents to understand that my kid's not the only one. That although the numbers are high, there's a sense of, there's more than one person that's dealing with this. And more importantly, it helps to create that conversation. I'm sure that parents that are listening to this today or hear about these results are gonna go home, probably talk to the kid and say, is everything okay? And that opens up that door of communication. I think as a community, we need to continue to educate our parents about what resources are available to them. I know with conversations that I've had with students, there's always that relationship and trust issue as well. Young people are sometimes hesitant to talk about what's going on, even with a counselor.
Really?
I know. Go ahead. Believe me, some kids tell you more than they need to, but that's okay too. That's good. But the point is that I think it's all about providing parents with avenues. The mental health system, unfortunately, is not the greatest. It's frustrating for both young people and the parents to try to get appointments. And I think that that's something that, it's a societal issue that we need to look at. But there's things that we can do at the school and community level to help address that.
Okay, Mrs. Cook?
We talk about risky behaviors such
Yes.
as drinking, smoking, and drugs. And there's no way anyone's gonna tell me that stress does not lead to all of the above.
You're absolutely right.
Yet when we look at the causes of tension and stress in schools, classes and grades on both grades are 64 and 65%. Now, what do we have? I mean, I think it's great that kids worry about grades
Sure.
and homework, but there's that fine line that we don't want to cross to have them get to the point that they're so stressed out about it, it's gonna cause them to maybe drink. Think of it, you have a rough day at work, go home, you have a glass of wine, maybe two. But what do we have in place to alleviate this?
That's
And
it's
what
a great-
can we
It's a great
do?
question. I think there's a couple things we are currently doing. One of the things that Dr. Smith put in place was the idea of, that we have 5-minute homerooms, but once every quarter, we have an extended homeroom. And what that does is, it provides an opportunity, it's done during progress reports, so it's at the time, and Mr. Kenny remembers, I'm sure, as a student going through this, but when the progress reports come out, it's an opportunity for the homeroom teachers to talk with the students, find out where they're at. It's also an opportunity for the guidance counselors to check in with the students. One of the things that I know at the high school, being there, and I know that they do this also at the middle school, and I'm sure they do it to some extent at the elementary schools, is making sure that we're reaching out to the students, specifically when we're seeing students struggle, or if we see a change in behavior. Like you're saying, usually as a teacher, I used to see stressors in junior year. There used to be the big stress came around the time of third term, around the time that the guidance council started talking about colleges, and you have that population of student that were not really trying as hard as they could, and now they're coming to that realization of, I may not get into the school I want, and my parents are gonna be disappointed in me. I'm disappointed in myself. What we do is we consistently reach out to these students, and we reach out to the parents as well. And we say, we're seeing Jane Doe is having difficulty with science. So the teacher's consistently reaching out to that student, providing extra help. The guidance counselor is reaching out to that student and reaching out to the parent. That communication alone does help students alleviate some stress because they know they're not alone. The other thing that we're able to do is we have not only our guidance counselors, we also have our school psychologists on staff. And they are tremendous resource to students if they need that extra layer of support. And so the best thing that we can do is always keep those lines of communication open. You're right, kids are always gonna stress out about grades. There's no magic wand that we're gonna be able to wave. It's a societal thing as well, that there's this mindset that I have to be the top student in my class to get into a school. If we continue having those discussions, if we continue educating our students about what they need to do to be successful, and more importantly, set expectations that are realistic. One of the things that we have been doing over the last 5 years is setting SMART goals. Goals that are attainable, goals that allow us to put a kind of statistical number attached to it, so we can have a step-by-step process to allow us to achieve that goal. We continually try to teach our students that same mindset, that if you have a goal set here, let's create a path that allows you to achieve that goal. And again, is it a perfect process? No, but that's one thing that we can continue to do and improve on doing.
And I think that's fantastic. I think our guidance staff, I know when my kids were going through, were phenomenal, but it's just, for me, it's concerning that it's still that high, and I'm wondering if there's anything else. I mean, and our kids gonna come forward, you know what I mean? And 65% is huge. Are they gonna come forward and say, listen, I'm really stressed, you know, and not only before a final exam.
Right.
It's huge, but I
Leading
don't
up to
know,
that.
yoga, I don't know. Is there something that could,
But I think, you know, to consistently talk with them and reassure them and, you know, there's so much, the problem is there's so much information out there that it's drowning to some students, because then they're filling their heads with, I need to do this and this in order to be successful. The other side of it is, because there's so much information, you know, education trends now are, you know, more about allowing the students to be the driver of the education, teaching them how to sift through the information rather than providing them with the information. So I think that alone, building that skill, will provide them with some security as well, because they'll be able to sift through and say, this is, you know, this is what this college is saying. Is this really where I want to be? You know, this is what I need to graduate. Do I understand what steps I need to do that?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Greg?
Thank you for the presentation. I mean, the first thing I'd say is the survey itself was very impressive. Its methodology and its comprehensiveness. And also, I appreciate your presentation for two principal reasons. One is you did a great job of contextualizing the important information, but also you delivered the information with genuine compassion for the children that you serve, and that really came through, and that to me is really important. You know, we talk a lot on this committee about student achievement, right? So I think it's worth explicitly saying that this is absolutely central to student achievement,
Absolutely.
right? Because what do we know? We know that students are not going to learn if they don't feel safe, if they're not healthy, if they're in despair, which clearly some of our students are. One of the things that I was encouraged to hear was the notion of student support teams that you mentioned, because I think it's and we've made some progress in developing and supporting social and emotional learning through the new positions and the restructuring of other positions. But the next step is to elevate those positions within the school environment, right? So that all the teachers, all the administrative staff know that those support staff can be really integral to making sure that every student is learning and is feeling safe and is healthy. So maybe if you could just elaborate a little bit on that and how that process is working at both the
Sure.
middle school and the high school.
So for the middle school level, you know, we've got a committee that meets every month, usually right at the beginning of the month. Sometimes it's twice a month, depending on, like, you know, for instance, vacation, February break, April vacation. We like to meet before the break and also after, just because it's a chance to kind of catch up on some of the things that maybe have happened during the break. We meet with Officer Kelly, who sits in on some of those student support teams, so she fills us in on some of the things that have been going on. But at least at the middle school level, we've got all the psychologists, the counselors will now be sitting in on it, all three principals, Mark Bedrosian and Therese, obviously. Myself, the nurse, sits in on it, and we literally go through some of the students that were on the previous year, that were kind of on our watch, on our radar, through our travels throughout the month. Students that may have been struggling, or situations that we find out, you know, a student is walking through our doors, and we had no idea that this was going on at home, and Officer Kelly is able to bring that in and shed some light. So we are able to then, in a you know, as best we can, keeping the confidentiality safe, but let the teachers know that have this, hey, this particular student is going through some tough times right now. Let's make sure we're watching them, and here's some of the things that we're doing. And but at least at that time, it's a chance for us to go over some of the students that we know, some of the ones that go and see the psychologists on a regular basis, that they're struggling. We can kind of say, you know, let's keep a watch on some of these kids. And it's really a community effort. I mean, it's the whole principle, right? A village of raising some of these kids, so.
And another thing we did was we trained Officer Kelly is certified as a trainer in mental health first aid, so 45 middle school and high school teachers took an 8-hour course on mental health first aid, because we all know it might be the history teacher, it might be their art teacher that a student is most connecting with. So those teachers are now trained to pick up on some of those signs so that they can help identify and connect them to the appropriate resources.
One of the things at the high school, it's reflective of what the middle school does. We have what we call intervention team that meets weekly. It's made up of a similar group that Andrew was talking about, administrators, counselors, school psychologists, nurse when she's available and there's no kids lined up at her door. But as well as our representative from the special ed department, as well as our alternative ed program director. And at that meeting, the purpose of it is to identify students at risk. We call them our 10% students, students at most need and most risk. We not only identify their concerns, but develop plans for intervention and kind of track their progress. So if you have a student that, for example, it could be an academic struggle. Something simple intervention could be setting up a weekly progress report, check-ins with them, whether it's the counselor or designated teacher. If it's a social emotional concern, it could be obviously setting up regular meetings with the counselor, regular meetings with the school psychologist, reaching out to the parent, trying to provide them with support, anything that we can provide them with advice and things.
Right.
If it raises to more of that, without getting into details, there will be more significant intervention.
Right.
The idea is, the idea is that we are consistently looking at our student body and identifying where they're struggling and trying to find ways. We are limited as a school because we have them for 6 hours a day.
Right.
When they leave, there's not much we can do to intervene. But what we can do is provide them, as you said, a safe environment when they're here,
Right.
and provide the parents with whatever support we can to help them as well.
Thank you. Just one more point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Which is, and you touched on it a little bit, but among the most important things we can do also as a school system and as a community is to give an opportunity for young people to express themselves,
Yes.
right? So we give them a chance to have their own voice heard. And I want to make a pitch for the role of the arts in this in this manner, because the arts, drama, music, visual arts provide that safe space, provide that avenue for creative expression in ways that other forms of expression don't. So I think we use a term where I work during the day of creative youth development, of using the arts as a particular tool, strategic tool to help young people, especially young people at risk, kind of turn their lives around. So I want to make a pitch for that.
And one of the wonderful things about Wakefield is the investment that the community and school has in the arts, and what a tremendous visual and performing arts program that we have. I don't have to tell some people on this committee how wonderful, all of you know how wonderful our students are. And we actually have a couple back here that are involved as well, but I can't agree with you more. And it's a huge understatement to say that it's not only just in the arts, but just involvement in general. I think that if you look at the statistics, students that are involved in any type of extracurricular activity, whether it's in the arts or sports or any other type of extracurricular, they lead a more healthy lifestyle because they feel they're part of something.
Right.
That those social emotional issues are usually tied to when you're feeling a sense of loss or a sense of isolation.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we are very proud of Wakefield High School as well, Wakefield as a community, for the investment that the town has in the extracurriculars that we have, and continue to support that. I think it's a tremendous thing.
Thanks.
Anybody? Yes, Ms. Danny.
First of all, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I love the Prezi. Your intern, you worked on it? Excellent.
She was good.
Yeah, very good. It was really, I do those presentations, so I'm like very impressed with it. I think it's great that in our budget that we did support adding mental health support at the middle school and throughout the district. I think that that's a really good move in the right direction. I think that you have all done a really excellent job in terms of integrating the services that are needed and providing a really safe environment. So congratulations to all of you, and I think that the Wake Up Coalition is fantastic. I just have a couple questions. One is that, one thing that concerned me was the alcohol use, and the connection with mental health, because I think that the two are so closely related. And I know that, and I think that we have to have punitive things in place when students get caught, drinking. It's illegal, and we have to be we have to hold the line on that. But do we have systems in place where we're kind of checking out where they get a mental health assessment as well? So if a kid gets caught drinking, and, is there a system in place that we can do a mental health screening to make sure, to identify maybe some issues that are just beginning to break?
I can speak to, briefly, not directly to answer your question, but I can tell you that as part of our policy, we have a memorandum of understanding, as you all know, in our handbook, with the Wakefield Police Department. If a student is engaging in an activity that violates the tobacco, alcohol, drug policy, it's in a police report, and it's clearly stated that the student, for example, was under the influence. That report does come to us for the purposes of us meeting with that student. I've, in my position as assistant principal, have had to meet with students that have violated this. And what it does is it provides an opportunity to not only address that drinking issue, but also a drug or a tobacco, but more importantly, address what's going on. I think that that's such a powerful tool, as you're saying. Again, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a mental health expert, but what I am is someone that can be a trusted adult and can be a guide for them if I'm seeing a pattern of behavior that deals with substance abuse. I frequently will reach out to parents and make them aware of it. Again, we have limitations on what we can do, other than, reaching out and providing the parents with support. And also providing in-school support. But with regards to substance abuse, those things, to some extent, have to be handled from an expertise outside of the school, so.
I do think that DPH, I'm not positive of this, but I do think that DPH has a tool, like a screening tool.
The ESPER tool?
Yeah, I think, I don't know what it's called, but it's a tool that, it's like a questionnaire that can identify, like, if a child gets caught drinking the first time, that they have to take this kind of assessment, and it'll flag whether or not there's potential issues where they need to, get additional, counseling or whatever they might need.
Yeah, and Kara, it's a,
The student tool, I think it's CRAFT is the acronym that goes down the side that helps.
That sounds
identify sort of
familiar.
What to do next.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you're using a student tool.
No, and we'll look into that. I just wanted to introduce Kara Showers, who's our also in our health department. She's running our youth program, and she also runs our Mass in Motion program.
Okay.
So she's a master's in public health and another asset to working with the schools to look at some of the strategies that other systems or other school systems are using around those tools, since we are kind of new to this, and
great.
seeing what we can implement with the police and the schools.
And then, the other thing that struck me was, I was thinking to Mr. Callahan's point about the question about talking to parents, what about, maybe you could put a question in for the next survey, something like, I feel like my parent, if I talk to my parents, that they would understand, or I feel like if I talk to my parents, they would get me the help that I needed, or I feel comfortable communicating with them, or something
Yeah.
about
Parents
that would be
offering
really helpful, piece for the parents to know. And then my third one was that I was struck, as Ms. Cook was, about the 65% that are stressed because of their grades in their classes. And I was reading somewhere, and I don't know where I was reading this, and there was a community that stopped doing the awards. They stopped doing awards. They do awards one time, and that's at the end of senior year. At the end of senior year, senior week, they have an assembly, and they give out awards to students. And that the reasoning was behind it was that it really serves no purpose other than to make parents feel proud of their children. But for the students who are getting the awards, students aren't really driven by external motivators, that it's all internal, and so getting an award doesn't encourage them to continue to do better. It's all within inside them. And that the students who aren't getting the awards feel even more stressed and saying, well, why didn't I get that award? Especially the ones who are probably very close to getting that award, probably beat themselves up about it. And so, I don't know if there's too much. I know that we want to recognize and appreciate the talent of our students, but at the same time, you know, those are external motivators, and there's no evidence that those are really effective. So I don't know if there's ever been any discussion around that.
There's been discussion at the middle school about it, about the 8th grade awards and whatnot, and some healthy discussions. And so I'm not sure where we where we officially stand, but that is definitely one of the things that side says, you know, what are we doing this for? I mean, some of the kids are going up, albeit they've worked hard for 4 years, and they're going up 7, 8, 9 times. It's like, oh. So it's definitely one of the thoughts. And the reality is I don't think it's going to get any, with Common Core standards coming down the line, and I don't think this is going to be anything that's going to get any easier for us students. We're going to have to make sure that we have doing probably extra due diligence now to make sure that 65 comes down, 65%.
I think one of the things too, it all comes down, again, I come back to education. If we're able to really clearly define for students and provide them with a roadmap of what they need to do to be successful, I think that there's, all of us as humans, we set high expectations, sometimes unrealistic goals for ourselves, and that puts a tremendous amount of stress. I've, as a teacher and administrator, had numerous conversations with students that said, I have to do this because I have to get into the school. And I'll ask them, why do you want to go to that school? Just for argument's sake, because I have to. Well, do you know anything about that school? No.
Right.
I just know it. And so I think it's very important that we look at everything. Everything needs to be on the table. There's not one fix-all, but more importantly, we need to look at everything as a whole and see what we can begin to do. And again, I think that it's vital that we bring parents to the table when we're having these conversations, because if I'm saying something to, Caroline, and she goes home and you're saying something to Caroline, if we're not on the same page,
Right.
that's going to increase stress for her. For anybody. I just use Caroline because I've had her as a student and we've worked well together, and that's so vitally important. I think we need to continue. I know that we need to continue to do that. And as good of open lines of communication we have, we could always get better.
Yeah. It's just fantastic.
Kate?
Was there the 30-day parameter on the mental health questions?
I can tell you right now.
I think there was.
I think there was. I think the majority
Actually-
of them dealt with the time frame because it helped to put in kind of a frame.
I think it
I
might have
think your
been
students have
longer
something to
period
say.
of time, though.
TJ, I think the girls behind you have the answer. Huh? No? They look like they had something to say.
Oh,
Do you guys remember from the survey? I've been impressed. When you took
It says past
guys-
12 months, right
Is
here.
it past 12
I
months?
think it was
Thank
6 or
you.
12
That's for the
months.
suicide question.
Okay, do you know the answer to that? Very good.
And then my other question was, are all the districts that are administering this doing it in the same time frame?
So, what we try to do is administer it consistently from every we're gonna do it in March again next time, so we wanna keep it consistent. We couldn't get it done in November, which is when we did it in 2011, so we wanna keep it consistent. But generally, they do it different times of the year. I knew we did it in spring in Lynn, and Melrose does it in the fall, so they say try to avoid within 2 weeks or within a month of a school vacation or Christmas break or something, so, because we see those mental health issues go up around the holidays, the drug use and drinking go up around the holidays, so you want to avoid those times, but.
And there's also, on the off years, right, there's a parental survey that goes out.
Yes, that's a really good point, and it might address some of the questions you all have. So we want to, we'll look at different models. There's a pride survey that we can administer to the parents in the off year. So this upcoming year will give us some data from the parent perspective. So we can kind of compare that with the youth risk behavior survey, where parents see their needs being, as a Wakefield parent, I took Dr. Reich's survey, and it was great to see kind of the results and kind of see where, other parents feel this way as I do. And so we want to get that data and look at the different tools that are out there and decide which one's going to be the best for our district.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom?
I certainly join my colleagues in thanking you for not only your hard work in the last year and leading up to this, but certainly everything that went into the presentation and sort of digging into the data and appreciating it the way that you have. It's certainly very telling. It's informative, which is what we need. A splash of cold water across our face is a critical part to any policy-making body like ourselves, but perhaps more importantly to the type of work that you guys do, day in and day out. And I think we're fortunate, frankly, to be able to have your resources, your time, your talent, your energies, to be able to bring these things forward and to share them with your colleagues back at the Galvin and the high school, and with the parents, whether it's through this vehicle or a handful of others that I'm sure that you're going to be taking advantage of and already have. Because I think it's we're fortunate because you're bringing these issues to the forefront and you're making folks aware of them, and it's sort of like we have we care enough to confront these issues, and that's a critical piece. There is a domino effect, and we've probably known for generations the domino effect of stress and drinking, and the other things that may go part of that, although those are certainly hand in hand. I think the most disturbing statistic, frankly, that I saw was the suicide one, the one that spoke to, frankly, the number of students that put together a plan, that had assembled a plan or constituted one in their own minds. And that's not to say that the other statistics around stress and stressors and drinking and substance abuse aren't important, because of course they are. But that one was the most disturbing to me, and to see that had grown the way that it had. And there's probably some. I don't want to use an inappropriate word, but there's probably some sophistication to that line of thinking, which is troublesome, which is very, very troublesome. And I guess that now leads perhaps back to the conclusion that you all drew about the mental health piece and how underserved we as a community and we as a society are in handling that. So, the fact that we're having these frank discussions as a community, and we need to have probably more of them. But it's a splash of cold water, as I said, in our face, and hopefully people will take some of this to heart. So I guess I would be most interested in not necessarily, certainly a reaction if you have one. But what are the types of things to add to your toolkit with regard to that in particular, meaning the suicide piece? Because that is, it's one thing, and again, not to belittle anything, but it's one thing if a student is stressed and goes and has a few too many drinks or drinks at all, frankly. But it's another thing to take some proactive steps and some really proactive thoughts is most disturbing.
When Dr. Stryken, when we were all meeting, he said it very poignantly that we don't want to be a district that's going to all of a sudden have to react to a situation.
No.
And so it was one of the things that I know we're going to have some healthy discussions around, like what are we going to do, because we want to be proactive. We want to make sure that kids don't feel like they are alone, that there is, we can all sit here and think of teachers that we've had in the past that have influenced us as students, as learners, and I think we've got to do a good job of communicating to students, whether we're administration or we're a custodian or we are, a bus monitor, that there is someone that cares about them when they walk or they step foot, at least under the guide of the Wakefield public school system, that there's going to be someone there to listen to them, yes, the math and the science and in the English, it matters, but at the end of the day, like, we can put it aside and have a a humanistic conversation, and let you know that we're there for you. And I know I've got teachers that I can think of in the Wakefield system that I know and I could have gone to. And I think it's a matter of getting that across to everyone, that you can't miss an opportunity with some of these students. And every time they come to you and talk to you, and whatever it may be, it's an opportunity that you just gotta not kind of take for granted. So to say exactly what, I don't,
Can I just interject
Sure.
on that? So I was just equally taken by that statistic out of all that really shook me up in reading the survey. And connected to that is the one, it was particularly the middle school, where children did not feel comfortable. The number was higher than I would have liked to see comfortable going to an adult.
Yeah.
There was only a few things I flagged in the suicide and that one, but they're connected. Because a child who's contemplating suicide doesn't obviously feel like there's someone in their life they can, turn to. So one of the things at the middle school we have to really look at is in the new schedule, we built in this advisory time toward the end of the day, which is replacing the old DL, which is more of a, I'll reserve my comments. But I think the advisory time has a lot of potential for that to be used in a way that affords students the opportunity to connect with an adult and to be strategic about making sure it's a very big school, and I think Galvin does an excellent job, but there is a need to really make sure that that could be a time to really hook in to the social emotional needs of kids. The second piece of it, though, that I think we have to look at, and I've talked long about this, having come from urban districts, you have to, our teachers know better than anybody else who the children at risk are. And one of the things we struggle with is we don't then have the resources for teachers to turn to be able to connect these kids with mental health counseling and support. We know who the children are, but where our psychologists are tapped out, our counselors are tapped out, and our teachers who do an exceptional job are not trained counselors. I mean, as a principal in an urban school, I felt like I was talking to kids and I had no business around their social emotional needs. However, there are agencies that come into schools and work with schools and work off of insurance. And to me, is a creative way. We don't currently do that in Wakefield right now. A lot of districts do have agencies that come in because it is a captive audience in the school. The students are there. It's during their school day. Parents are much more apt to agree because unfortunately, many of our students have most of the needs. Their parents have a lot on their plates. They're working multiple jobs. They may be struggling financially. It's hard for them, it's an extra step then to have the parent then connect them to an outside agency to give them the support they need. Even though the school may say, you ought to get your child some mental health counseling. I really believe that as a school, we have a responsibility and can do more about providing those services within the school day. We've got to be more proactive in connecting with some of these agencies, and we've begun to have those conversations because I think our teachers know who the kids are, and they know that many of those students are not getting the supports that they need. And this is starting as early as elementary school, where one of the impetuses behind this grant that we wrote was because I had an elementary school counselor just say, Steve, I can't do justice to the needs of the children in our school that need counseling and mental health support. So that's just my 2 cents on it. It's a very it's a grave concern as far as I see, and I don't want to be the district that you hear about these districts that all of a sudden respond when you have and I know Wakefield's had instances in the past of suicide. We have data that suggests we need to act now.
Just, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I had a follow-up. I know that one of the things I think that some of the data also speaks to is the success that the community, that the school district and the school community have had around bullying.
Yeah.
And that we've taken some really proactive steps, applied some resources, some funding, some professional development, teacher training, some really aggressive steps around that, and I think this data speaks to that. I think with regard to the types of things we're talking about now, the superintendent spoke to, and you folks have, we need to do a better job than we did with bullying around this.
Absolutely.
Okay, Evan?
I don't think it's possible to put too fine of a point on those suicide numbers. I think we're talking about 16%. We're talking about almost 1 in 6 high school students seriously thinking about taking their own lives.
Yep.
Which is it's shocking to me and it's heartbreaking. Mr. Tetrault, you mentioned, teachers that that we all have those teachers that we can think about that really influenced us. I think it's very fair to say that 2 of those kinds of educators are here with us tonight, because I can say from personal experience that I knew as a student when I had both of you that I could come to you guys anytime that I needed anything, and I'm sure you've carried that into your administrative roles, and that is thank you for caring, because this is I am almost at a loss for words looking at those numbers. What's fascinating to me is that the bullying program has been successful. We're seeing our bullying numbers trend in the right direction, but we're seeing these suicide numbers jump almost double.
Yeah.
And if you have any comments on that, please share them. But I also wanted to address Ms. Danahy's point about when we, for instance, if we catch a kid drinking, which happens all the time, is there a real focus and real effort? The punitive part it's necessary to some degree. I mean, it's gotta hurt when you get caught doing something wrong, or you're gonna do it again. But there needs to be in my opinion, a much stronger focus on figuring out why, and welcoming them and helping them in terms of moving forward. And I think there should even be a kind of a standard procedure. I don't want to standardize it, but some kind of real focus on that, because I do think that was lacking. And when I was a student, I saw that was lacking. That it was more of, here's your suspension, come back when you're ready. Come back after 5 days, and that's not working, obviously. And I think they are directly related. So I just not to put too fine of a point on it, but I don't think it's possible. I think it's horrible, and I know everyone's taking it seriously.
One of the things I can say about Evan, and something that I was going to allude to, how important peers are, classmates are in this situation. Evan, you said that, we were someone that you could always go to. You were also, as a student, a great voice for your classmates, too. And I think that we can't understate the significance of a friend and what they can be. Fortunately, this year, I've had a number of students come up to me and to my counterparts and my colleagues and express concern about a friend. And they felt safe doing so, and they felt like it was the right thing to do. And in many cases, I think that made the difference for that individual. And I'm not going to say that if that didn't happen, something horrible would happen to that individual. But what I am saying is that we have students that are willing and wanting to help their friends and know that it goes beyond what they can do, and know that they can come to individuals at the school, trusted adults, even outside of the school, and say, I'm concerned about my friend. And I think that that's something we need to continue to reiterate and drive home, that you're not alone, that as a friend you don't need to carry this burden, that there are people that can help. I tell students all the time when they come into my office, I'm not a counselor, but I'm someone that you can trust, and I promise you that I'll find someone that can help you. And I think that message needs to continue for all our young people, and our parents too, that we may not have all the answers, but we can help find those answers for you.
Well, thank you very much for a lot of food for thought here.
Thank you.
Keep up your good work.
Gonna try. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to continue your section, or you want to go back? And going back to the chairman's remarks and reports, and in your package, I enclosed a copy of a letter I had received from the Chamber of Commerce. I gave it to you for information only at this point in time, because I would like to refer study of that to the communications subcommittee, please. And if you feel it's appropriate at some point to ask the chamber representatives to come in, I'm sure they'd be happy to. Basically, the communication is them asking us if we agree that they should endorse this resolution that's going forth, or do we disagree with it? So if Mrs. Danahy could put it on your agenda, I'd appreciate it. Okay. I also enclosed what I considered to be a good faith summary of all the goals that had been presented, and also made an effort to try to streamline things, so it was a small enough list that we could truly focus on all the goals. Did I blatantly overlook something? Or does everybody feel as though they were included in what their thoughts were? Okay, we have a motion for discussion.
Move that the school committee approve their 2014-2015 goals as presented by the chairman.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any comments, questions, changes to be suggested? We good? Wow. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Good. Thank you very much. You made that easy. And now we can go to Dr. Reich's items next.
Thank you, Mr. Callen. I just have a few items. I did include in your packet delegation of authority, which I did not do last year, but I wanted to just be clear in the event that I am away from the district, that Dr. Smith, I'm very happy that she's my teammate and partner in this work, would be acting superintendent. And then in the event that we're both out of the district, which did happen last week as we were both at a conference, Mr. Pifferling would assume those responsibilities, just so there's a clear line of authority. But I wanted to put that in writing so that you all were all aware of that in the unlikely event that something were to happen when I was out of the school district. So that was the first item. Second, I did include in your packets the presentation that Dr. Smith and I shared with superintendents at the Massachusetts State Conference in Mashpee last week. We volunteered, not forgetting that we had volunteered, and we ended up being reminded that we had to present with all the other things we were doing. But we did a joint presentation around our work with principals and administrators as coaches and our ongoing professional development with principals, which I started last year, and Dr. Smith was a great student of it and shared her experience being part of it among our principals, really focusing on giving quality, bite-sized, high-leverage feedback to teachers throughout the year. And we presented to about 75 superintendents from around the state. And we received a lot of praise for our work. And it was nice to see that people seemed genuinely intrigued by what we had done and interested, and then wanted to try to replicate it. The book we used was Leverage Leadership by Paul Bambrick, which has become my Bible around school improvement and leadership in terms of teacher development and educator development. And so we really, and we actually practiced watching videos of teaching with superintendents, which they rarely do, and then practicing giving feedback to the teacher in the video, and it was a really powerful discussion at the conference. So, and it was a good 2 days of networking for both Dr. Smith and myself, and it's always encouraging to see that the work we're doing is very much on par with our local communities, and that we there's a lot of good things happening in Wakefield, and so it was definitely reinforced that over the last 2 days. During the conference, Governor Patrick came and released his safety and security report, which I will email you via link this evening. It just came out at the end of last week. He physically gave it to us. But it's particularly important for us. We've done a lot of work around school security and safety in the last year, in revamping our crisis plans. Every school is submitting their plans for review by this team of Wakefield leaders, I would say, who serve on the NEMLEC team, which is the regional safety team. They're actually going to review for me, because I'm not an expert in this area, each one of our plans. So there's some consistency, uniformity, and that we ensure that some of the recommendations that came out of this task force are reflected in our plan. So many of them are around emergency management teams, school resources officers, and then some of the work we've done with Alice, is reflected in there. And actually, Scott Sensabaugh, who came to present here on Alice, was a member of the governor's task force. So I feel like and he did come and speak to our crisis team. So we've been I feel like we've been speaking to an expert, and Jason, I want to just call it Jason Levine and Brian Robertson at the high school, and Jane Farah, who no longer is an employee of the Wakefield Public Schools, retired, is still been an incredible asset coming back and helping us, and they'll be reviewing the plans over, at the beginning of August, so that we're ready to go, ready to go once school begins with our plans. But I'll send you a link so you can take a look at what the recommendations were. The school's district will have a booth at the Italian Festival this year. I forgot that I had promised that we would do that, but I think it is a good idea. It's perfect timing, back to school. Dr. Smith and I, at the very least, plan to be there to answer questions and hand out information about the start of school. But it seems like a great chance to do that. I know I see those two guys volunteering to be part of it as well. But but I think it's it's good for us to be ambassadors of the school system, and I'm sure parents have a million questions that as we ramp up to the start of school. So we will have a booth. Thank you to Susan for helping us, and Janine Cook for helping organize that. Galvin and Doyle, I without taking a lot of time on both projects, I'm very pleased with the progress in both those buildings. There's a lot of work. August is going to be quite a month, but there's a lot of work to do. But I'm impressed with what I've seen in both schools. I know that the school committee will be having a tour soon of the Galvin school. And at the Doyle, I will be emailing you as well to set up, to give you options for to visit the school. Some of you have been by, but I would like you to, school committee, to have an opportunity to see the Doyle. We've had a lot of painting done, lights have been replaced, walls have been put up, a lot of work to get the school ready. Bathrooms replaced, toilets replaced for small children. So I would love to invite the school committee to be part of that. I will tell you that right now, we have increased the total enrollment for the Doyle is 126 students, which is, I would say, is even better than I thought at this point. We have 31 additional regular education students than the current school, than the just completed school year. That 31 additional general education students, and that's with a month left to go as parents continue to sign up. So we're actually more full than I thought we'd be. We're not at capacity. I think I remember putting 175 as like a long-term goal, but I think we're about where, if not further ahead than what I thought in terms of enrollment at the school. We are still searching for a director for the Doyle School. I certainly hope that the next meeting I will have be able to report on where we who will fill that role for the upcoming school year. Just getting a lot of questions about bring your own device that have been floating in the community on those online forums. But good questions. I had Dr. Smith, myself, Mr. Metropolis, and Mr. Weiner met about what our next steps were around that. A couple things. We are going to, we have posted FAQs on the website with answers to key questions by parents. Principal is going to, Mr. Metropolis is posting a sort of a blog post explaining in more detail the plans for BYOD, and the school plans to hold an information session before school starts to answer further questions. But I do want to reiterate that there is, while we've encouraged students to purchase their own devices, we have an obligation as a school system to provide devices for any child that cannot afford a device or does not choose to purchase a device. And we have made ample plans we're prepared for that when school starts. I did want to recognize our food service director. I will send you the links of this as well. She was interviewed by Fox 25 News, or she was quoted or was briefly interviewed by Fox 25 News and WBZ News about the School Nutrition Association's annual conference was in Boston last week or the week before, and Kristen is the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the School Nutrition Association, and so she was featured prominently. I unfortunately didn't say Wakefield under her name. I would like to have seen that, but
Didn't say Reading, though, did it?
didn't say Reading. But I will send you the link so you can see her and her usually bubbly self talking about her work and the work of the association. And then finally, the superintendent's challenge. People want to know the update on the challenge. I say this with a lot of I
This just
reluctantly
in.
share this information with all of
Razor
you.
ready?
This is what I have so far. We have the 3 students who read the most books, as measured by completed book reviews, will win Chromebooks. So we have, I'm not going to read the name yet, but we have a student that has read 33 books already. That's first place. Second place is 28 books. It appears those 2 students are related. And the third place is 26 students. They are all elementary school students. The school with the highest percentage, my guess, I have to do some math, is that right now is the Galvin School would win the party, which would be unfortunate, Mr. Piffling, because that's got the most students. So,
Let's go, Walton.
yes. The number of books, the 10,000 book challenge. There's some discrepancy in the data, but the library has different numbers than I have. So so far there have been about 1,700 book reviews that have been completed, which is a little low. The library claims that there have been 5,029.
Library all the way.
Now, the library's number is because they are including preschoolers, which I think is actually fair.
Sure.
Incoming kindergartners and preschoolers. And according to the library, they have read 2,135 books, preschoolers, in Wakefield. Incoming in elementary students, grades 1 to 4, the library claims we have 2,160 books read, because they also are taking paper copies as well of kids. They give out incentives. What it appears is that not every student is entering a book review, and so we would just push students to. Well, I don't want to push them, but that way we can actually give them credit for reading the book. And then middle and high school students, right now, we're at 734 books read by middle and high school students. I will say that I do think those numbers will increase because the high schoolers have to do it for their before they come back to school. But it looks like, regardless of what number you take, even if I averaged out, we are on pace to hitting 10,000 books.
Your
At this
wetsuit's
point.
ready?
My wetsuit's ready. I did go swimming in a pond over the weekend. I did think it was slightly cleaner than Lake Q, but I was just practicing my stroke in a pond in Andover over the weekend. So, but we'll continue to update you as the summer goes on. And I love the enthusiasm. I did have a student, I want to give her credit, email me over the weekend saying that she wanted more credit because the books that she was reading were particularly long and wanted credit for more than one book. I had to tell her, no, a book is a book. So, but I appreciate all the interest and support that community has given for that. And then the next item on my agenda is the new positions. And I did notice that in the description I wrote to you, we didn't actually put figures, it said insert. For whatever reason, I gave you the wrong copy. So I can give you the numbers right here. It is the Doyle custodian, the position is $34,466 is the cost of the Doyle custodial position. And the cost of repurposing the food service coordinator is $6,713. So we are asking for a school psychologist position, which is we contract with Walker Partnership right now. In just using the same funds to hire a .6 person actually gives us more flexibility because that person would be able to assess students and provide counseling, not just provide counseling, which is important as we open the new childhood center. So this is directly has impact on the Doyle because the caseload of students that they'll be seeing will be primarily at the Doyle, but also at the Woodville School, and gives us the flexibility for them to provide, to help provide assessments for those students, in addition to providing some of the counseling that they do for the behavior program at the Woodville. The Doyle custodian, I had said at earlier on this year that we were going to look internally, that we always knew we had to have a custodian at the Doyle. You have to have a full-time custodian there. And in fact, that was corroborated by the outside consultant, Gail Zeman, who did an analysis of as much as I pushed her on, our FTE, she said, given the square footage of our buildings, it would be necessary to put a full-time custodian at the Doyle. And so using our funds, looking at our overtime funds, looking at our facility rental revenue, as well as some of our summer help money, we were able to repurpose the funds to hire a full-time custodian at the door, or with the committee's approval, to hire a full-time custodian at the Doyle. And then finally, the food service coordinator, that was initially put on the last agenda, but I wanted to look at the job description. You have a job description because that is a new position. Ms. Morello spent the first year really analyzing. She was charged with analyzing the structures and the efficiencies of the school nutrition program, which by all accounts has been very successful, her work this year. And one of her key recommendations moving forward was to hire a food service coordinator. Not an additional position, but to repurpose a current clerk's position to take on some responsibilities that are well beyond the role of a clerk, including leadership, coordination, and evaluation, which is something we just discussed at the recent negotiations with our food service staff, is the need to make sure we have quality evaluations. This person also would be a full-year employee. And the additional cost, which would come out of revolving fund, would be $6,000, almost $7,000 to repurpose her role to be food service coordinator. So with that, I would put that forward for motions of the school committee. Of course, the food service coordinator also comes with the job description as well.
Do you want a separate motion for job description? Or do we just, yeah?
Separate.
Okay.
Yep.
Move that the school committee approve the position of school psychologist as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Yeah, the motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor?
Move that the school committee approve the position of Doyle custodian as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor?
Move that the school committee approve the position of food service coordinator in the food service coordinator job description as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Okay. Made second. Any questions?
I just want to make sure we're giving Dr. Streich and Mr. Pifferling the credit they deserve. Dr. Streich mentioned that the extra $6-7 grand is coming out of revolving, but that's also, it's important to note that that's without raising fees, right?
That's correct.
To me, I think it's a no-brainer, moving someone who's clerical to non-clerical, and obviously that position needs to be paid adequately for the services they're providing. So I just wanted to put a finer point on that we're paying it out of revolving. It's an additional cost, but it's not going to impact fees at all.
Okay. All those in favor? Yeah. Very good. All set.
And then, thank you. And then the enrollment update, I think in your packet you have a copy of our current enrollment, although that was, the changes by the day. Our enrollment is up almost 100 students from the end of last year. Some of that can be attributed to the Doyle, but our high school numbers are up.
Yeah. Well,
Right now, the high school stands at over 1,000. It's the first time in a few years, is my understanding, the high school's been above 1,000. I think we ended the year at 990. So I think that's encouraging. The Galvin's about where we thought. I think 1110 is the number we had been thinking for the Galvin, and that's precisely where we are to start the year. And so I think it's healthy, and certainly increasing our enrollment is always a good thing. And hopefully more families will continue to make Wakefield Public Schools their choice. But I do expect those numbers to even go up as hopefully we enroll more students at the Doyle before the start of the school year. Any questions on enrollment?
well, just kind of. Mrs. Perriello was successful in hiring of that extra first grade teacher?
Did they hire that role? We were just talking about this today. I believe they did hire somebody for that role. Yes, so that's the Woodville class that moved to the Walton for first grade.
Right.
Yep.
I just knew we had added another grade.
That's correct.
Had added first
Yep.
grade there. Yes.
One thing that struck me was how few students we have enrolled in the half-day programs. But it seems like we have a really huge number going to full-day, even with the fee, and that the half-day programs are, I think that just really shows the need for a full-day program, and one that we can provide as a district, because I think that the numbers here just really do represent the need for it. And that if we could find, funding it,
Yep.
because I think that to me shows the need.
Well, you're right. The trend is clearly continues to go towards full day. Even though it's for pay, more parents are making that decision for their
Right.
families. I mean, you can look at the numbers here. There's only 55 half-day students in the entire district, which is pretty small when you think of it. And that number has continued to decline over the last few years.
Yeah, I think these numbers are the lowest that we've ever seen in terms of.
I would guess that's the case. I mean, we have some classrooms of 13 students here, so 11 actually. Yeah, it's one of 11 at the
Yeah,
the one at the Doyle is 11.
it's 11. Is there one that's,
12 at
There's one
Greenwood.
that's 12. Yeah.
was there a 9 at Woodville? It came in fuzzy, so.
No,
18.
19.
19, okay.
Those are the old days.
Is it, And in Woodville totals, there's an AM, and what's the Woodville PM?
AMA
Zero.
Zero. They don't have-
Zero,
they don't have a
they
PM.
don't have it.
Yep.
It's 18. Mine came in fuzzy, so.
Any other comments on enrollments? Okay. Great. Mr. Pifflin.
Thank you, sir. I have provided financial statements. Seeing as the timing of this meeting, typically you get your financial statements the first meeting of the month, which encumbers numbers through the end of the last month. So I gave you a 2-week snapshot of July, what's happened so far the first 2 weeks of July. So it's very early on, but one of the things I did want to show you is that we have begun a process of encumbering payroll. And then what we did was we encumbered the budget number, not the true outgoing number. Obviously, when we budget the number, we use as accurate a data as we can. However, through attrition of hiring, resignations, retirements, things like that, sometimes we come in higher or lower to, of that number. So what we did encumber was actual salary, actual budget numbers that were approved back in February by the school committee and March and April by the town meeting, FinCom and whatnot. So one of the highlights here is everybody, I think my phone, surprised my phone didn't ring off the hook more, was it shows currently we have a negative balance in payroll of $228,000. It's important to note that custodial and clerical, as well as some paraprofessional numbers that came in, are FY14 numbers. When I ran the reports, I'm always about transparency, when I ran the reports, it included that salary for FY14 that I had written a letter to the town accountant to transfer those numbers back to FY14. When the letter was written, it hadn't been done yet. I think I wrote the letter the day before I ran the reports, so no reason why the town accountant should have done this in such a short fashion. I'm not putting the blame on the town accountant. They were given numbers right before I ran the report. So I'm hoping by the next report run that will flush back to FY14 and it will bring some of these numbers back into alignment. So before the numbers start flying out the door here.
When will you have projected actuals with the people you have on hand, like September?
Yeah, I would say that we probably will, by the time we fill all the positions, it may get close to the September 1st. So I would say the September school committee meeting will be a more accurate snapshot of where we are for payroll for the year.
Okay. Any questions?
I did not, just to make note, a couple of things on the revenue page, or not revenue, but where we get our funding. The Chapter 70 projected and actual are the same. Those should actually be tweaked a little bit. The projected came in lower than what the actual did for Chapter 70 dollars, so I do need to tweak that. Grants are starting to come in now, so obviously when I presented this or created this, the grant numbers weren't there, and they're going to come in through September because some of these grants are September 1 through August 31st grants. So as those come in, I'll update the spreadsheet, but at the time I did this, there was only one grant in, so I didn't feel compelled to include any grant information. And with the revolving accounts, the town hasn't given me my carry forwards yet, although I can reject what they are. I'm waiting for them to come in munis before I share them out. And that the town and I are on the same page with the revolving accounts. I don't see that that'll be an issue, but I just want to make sure that that's there. So it's a very incomplete, it's a 2-week snapshot of the budget, but I do want to let you know that we were encumbering payroll on a system that's probably going to meet our needs. So that's that. Any questions on the reports? Great. On the personnel report, we haven't listed any new hires. Everybody was appointed as of July 1 or later, so this is really a June, in which you'll see there are 27 dedicated Wakefield educators or support personnel throughout the district who have either retired or moved on to something different. So 27 exited the district, and the July one will be quite active, as well as the September one, because that's when all teachers will be appointed. So, although they've received their letters, but they'll become active in September. So, any questions on personnel? Thank you.
Great. Moving on to consent agenda.
Move that the school committee approves the regular and executive session minutes of June 24th.
Second.
Questions, corrections? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Payroll warrants?
Move that the school committee approves payroll warrants number 49, 51, 51A, 51B, 51C, and 51D.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? Subcommittee and liaison reports, policy.
Okay, so we have a motion to put on the table three new or three updated policies. The committee met, the subcommittee met on the 24th June, and the first policy is 902E, which is a class size. So very quickly, you'll recall that at the last committee meeting, we talked about the class size policy and concluded that we want to try to more thoughtfully address how to set and update and reinforce the class size policy. So the new language that you have here reflects the language of our labor contracts. It establishes a process for the superintendent to provide an analysis of class sizes to the committee, and for the committee to respond, and then gives the superintendent some flexibility, some short-term flexibility to adjust class sizes if needed over the recommended limits, and then finally gives the school committee the authority to issue a waiver in particular instances rather than going through it year to year. So, so you'll have 2 weeks to take a look at that and review that, and then come back and discuss that at our next committee meeting. The second policy is about salute to flag and display of the flag on school property, and it directs that policy where it is appropriatly directed, which is locally to Wakefield's town government, since they're the managers of school buildings and school properties. And finally, the last one, the last policy is 1000E, which deals with intra-district school transfers and lays out a process that involves both the receiving school principal and sending school principal, and final approval from the superintendent's office. So those are the three we want to put on the table tonight for discussion and approval at our next meeting.
Okay.
Move that the school committee put on the table for 2 weeks the following policies: 902E, class size; 907R, salute to flag and display of same; and 1000E, inter-district school transfer request.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions at this time? Jane?
I remember 3 years ago when we were looking at the salute to the flag and display of the flag. I thought that the committee was told that it can only be done through an executive order of the governor or through the president, and that the town, is that something you looked into? Because we were told 3 years ago that it had to be done through the governor, and that the town couldn't override that. So is that something you looked into?
Through the chair, yes, exactly. That's exactly where we started the conversation. And then, so then the question was, is there a local authority to complement or supplement those decisions? And the decision or the guidance we got was that this really was the town's decision.
And was that from the state, that guidance?
No. Yeah, well, I say that. Steve looked into this directly, right? I mean, you spoke to the town administrator's office and the board of selectmen.
Right, yeah, and I think you looked at it as well.
We did, and when we really tried looking for it, we couldn't find a very clear statute that said that absolute had to be that way, and there was a lot of requests for different occurrences that were contrary to the policy that we had. And we would find ourselves out of sync with the rest of the town buildings at times, because there were, the schools had one policy and the town had another, and we were trying to be in line.
That makes sense. Did
Yeah.
anyone check with the governor's office to see if there's, I don't know,
It was,
law or
the
rule?
MGO was in kind of very muddy.
And that was, we were in the committee, I think, with you back 3 years
Right,
ago.
right.
When we were told it had to come from, I mean, I'm just putting out there, if you say
But
it
that's what
can,
the
it can.
policy says now. It says lowering the American flag to half-staff can only be done by executive order of the governor of Massachusetts, the president of the United States, or under the direction of the town of Wakefield's government body. But you're saying that
Back 3 years ago, I don't remember.
couldn't be in there?
I
We
know
were
that.
told it couldn't be, but
Right.
again, if, again, I'm just throwing it out there, because we were already told no, back 3 years ago.
And I know there was Dr. Halloran felt very strongly in that case based upon some previous experience she had in another district. But the more we looked into it, we couldn't find anything that was that stringent.
So,
I'm just asking.
so just to clarify, there's nothing in Massachusetts general laws that prevents a local community and a local school district from flying the flag at half-mast if it chooses to do so.
Thank
I
you.
think
That's exactly what I was
That's the
looking for.
bottom line.
Thank you.
That's what we've concluded. So,
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, place these on the table? I'm not sure maybe we already did that, but budget.
The Budget Subcommittee hasn't met since the last school committee meeting, but we would like to schedule something before the next school committee meeting. And just as an aside, I'd like to congratulate the business administrator for tonight's report. I know that the encumbrance of salaries was no easy feat, considering the type of obstacles that perhaps have existed in the past, and none of them being yours. But I think this is an excellent process to begin. And as soon as you get the adjustments made, we'll all be looking at a much cleaner and clearer picture much earlier in the year. So thank you for getting that.
Have you chosen a specific date for this meeting?
I've not. Dr. Shrike and I spoke about it yesterday, and I was going to send out an email to the members. That perhaps next Thursday morning is what we were thinking about, but we hadn't actually sent the email out yet.
And communications? I'm sorry, I skipped labor, I'm sorry.
We have not met since
Oh,
that last
okay.
meeting.
Communication, the curriculum/communication subcommittee meeting at our first meeting on June 18th. We're going to be meeting on this Thursday night as well. And we just talked about, we had some ideas in terms of ways that we want to communicate. There's a lot of changes to the curriculum or changes to staffing, and some new procedures with, you know, around technology, around standardized testing. And the goal is for us to continue to coordinate the best way to disseminate information so that people feel informed and are understanding what's going on as all these changes are taking place, so.
Great. Any other items that were not brought up? And future dates, you know, I hope you all enjoyed your vacation because it's over. We will be having our two regular meetings on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays in August. Anything for the agenda that anybody would like to put on the agenda for August? No? Okay. School committee comments. Start with Greg.
I don't have anything in addition to what we covered tonight, thanks.
Okay. Tom?
The only thing I'd like to say is, I guess, congratulations to Drs. Reich and Dr. Smith for the presentations that they gave down at MASS last week. I think that, you know, not only certainly highlights your professionalism and Dr. Smith's, but it begins to properly put Wakefield in a place in a statewide association, a position of prominence, a position of sort of respectability. And from my brief, you know, reading of what you sent to us, it sounds, reads like it was a very good, very interesting presentation. So thank you for putting yourself out again, not only for your own professional benefit, but certainly for Wakefield's.
Ann?
I'm all set.
Kate? Evan?
I actually just want to wish the best of luck to a Wakefield High School graduate who just graduated in the class of 2014, Brian Ald, who began his basic training with the National Guard this month. So wish him the best of luck and thank him for his service.
Janine?
All set.
Okay. The only thing I have is, you know, I continue to be amazed at the progress of the Galvin. The Thursday construction meetings with the Permanent Building Committee have been very productive, and you know, it's in a way you walk around there and it's kind of scary to think that you know this building's got to be ready to be turned over in just a couple of weeks, but the vast jumps that they're making are amazing, and I have every confidence it will be ready. But short of that, a motion to adjourn would be nice.
Move that the school committee adjourns their meeting of Tuesday, July 22nd.
Second.
All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned.
Oh.